Carolina This Week with Tim McGinnis.
Good morning. Welcome to Carolina This Week. This morning we're going to continue talking to candidates for the 7th Congressional District seat. Today a familiar face, former Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer, and a little bit later in the show we're going to talk a little bit about cystic fibrosis and how you can get involved in stopping a painful disease that really hurts the youngest people in our community. First up though, former Lieutenant Governor, current 7th Congressional District candidate Andre Bauer. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
I want to talk to you first. Friday, former Lieutenant Governor now Ken Ard resigned. What went through your head when you heard about what happened and the fact that he pled guilty to all the charges against him?
Well, I hate it for Ken. He's really a good fella, and I hate it for his family. He's got some young children. I'm sure it's a relief off of him. He's been fighting this a while, and so he's probably relieved to move on. And so my heart goes out to Ken. This too shall pass, and my hat's off to the new Lieutenant Governor. It's a tough job. It's paid half what all constitutional officers are in South Carolina, but you have a $40 million agency. So it's a tough, what they call part-time job that absolutely is full-time. Have
you had any conversations with him? I imagine you probably talked to him once or twice
him,
and going through everything.
I texted him yesterday and said, you're in my thoughts. If you need to get away for a night at the beach, come on down. We'll go grab dinner. All of us do things we wish we could go back and change. I, for one, am one of those people. And so this will be a time in his life when he just wants to get through it and move on to other things. I mean, we all, make missteps. That's part of life's challenges, but how you respond to those and how you move forward from those is, I think, really shows the character of individuals. And so I look for great things out of Ken. Okay,
let's move on to why you're here today. You're a candidate for the 7th Congressional District. I want to ask you first, not a lot of people, but I have heard some criticism that you've lived all over the state and the only reason you're living here now is just to run for this particular seat so you can get the job in Washington. How do you respond to that criticism?
I say you've been talking to my opponents. They got to find something to complain about, and just getting out head to head and doing a little bit of campaigning and trying to give the best vision, I'm going to beat them every time. If you want to talk about issues, I'm going to beat them every time. So, hey, take the shot anywhere you want. I make a living buying real estate. A lot of people criticize me for having my personal house for sale. Well, that's how I make a living. Since I was a little boy and my granddad taught me carpentry, I would buy little houses in college, fix them up. That's how I paid to get through college. When I retired from state government, I didn't have to live where I was born or where my parents live. I got to live where I wanted to live and retire. And I moved here, and I've had a very enjoyable time. And I would say this district wasn't even drawn when I moved here. It wasn't close to being drawn when I moved here. And so that sounds great in theory, that smoke screen they throw up, but I moved here, and then later on the district was drawn. I can't remember, I bought double-digit number of houses here, bought them, fixed them up, and sold them. And so I have a good little business here, and I'm a working man. And so people are going to criticize you. I don't get bogged down in that. I say, come on, beat me up anytime, and then let's talk about what you're going to do to change government. What are you going to do differently than I am? Have you voted to raise taxes when I hadn't? Do you know anything about going to Congress? Do you know what the job entails outside of just going up and voting? What are you going to do for economic development? How are you going to create jobs in this community? And while the rest of them are doing a lot of talking, I'm actually creating jobs with no title, with no elected office. I'm here. They can say, well, I'm not from here. No, a lot of people aren't from here that still consider themselves part of this community, and I consider myself part of this community. But we had a recent announcement here lately where I put a deal together for the Myrtle Beach Speedway. New ownership. The guy's actually now looking to move down here himself. I would ask you this. Do we want to run him off too because he's not from here? I sure hope not. I hope that not one business that controls so much of Myrtle Beach is going to control who the next congressman is in this district, but that we welcome people from all walks of life, from all over the country. This is the biggest place in the state for in-migration of seniors. Big part of our district, and I'm the one that clearly is most well-versed when you talk about senior issues. And so I bring a whole different dynamic to this, and I'm ready to go to work. And so I'm excited about it. I love it. I hope we'll have debates. So far we have not, but I want to get down to real issues, and I want people to see the vast difference between myself and anybody else that's talking about running for U.S. Congress.
Well, let's talk about some of those issues.
Okay.
First off, one of the biggest issues facing this district is I-73. Something that's been in the plans for dozens and dozens of years. What would you do as a congressman to see it through?
Well, number one, South Carolina, poor rural state. We're still a donor state. Why are we paying for states that are much wealthier than us to build their roads? By giving part of our collection to other states from gas tax. It's ridiculous. So number one, as a congressman, I'm going to fight to say we should at least get back everything our people pay in South Carolina. Number two, I don't think we ought to be, the state or federal government should be in the rest area business. I think we should either lease or sell all rest areas, and that would bring in revenue. You no longer have the water bill, the power bill. You no longer have to clean the rest areas, keep them up. You could sell them off and have that revenue coming in, and that could go to enhance our highway system. Number three, I wouldn't be against looking at a toll road. We're going to have to get creative, because I can't say, hey, let's go spend all this money everywhere and then let's tackle this $15 trillion debt. And we're going to have to prioritize, and we're going to have to cut out a lot of things that the federal government is currently paying for. And the big question is, ask ourselves, is this worth borrowing from China to fund this project? And so everything that we're paying for, funding new embassies all around the world, is that really worth it? Department of Education, do we really need one in Washington? Should we continue to support all these other countries that aren't even our friends when we can't pay our own bills? And so there's a lot of questions. Clearly, I-73 is a priority. All you have to do is get right out here on 501, sit in bumper-to-bumper traffic in the off-season. Forget about in primetime season. Right now, yesterday I sat in bumper-to-bumper traffic on 501. Look, there's a couple factors here. Number one, we want people to have easy access to get in and out of the beach. Number two, we want more tourism. We don't want them to complain about all the time it took them. But number three, and probably most important, how are we going to get all these people out if there is a disaster? How will we get them out in an emergency? We're limited on how we do that. And so there's a number of factors that need to be talked about. I don't think there's a debate anymore whether we need it. I think the debate is how can we carefully fund it. And I think that the vast majority of the people that are willing to save some time are willing to pay a buck to save that time. And it's worked very well down in Hilton Head.
Jobs. A lot of people say you bring I-73, you bring jobs here. What would your plan be to bring jobs to this district, which is going to include some of the hardest hit by the recession counties in the whole country?
Absolutely. Well, it does bring jobs. It brings access. It brings more people. It brings a different route in. There are a multitude of different things that it does. And one other thing I forgot to mention on this, we ought to look at a creative way that maybe a big part of the cost is acquiring the land. Why don't we come up with some kind of provision that says, you landowner, say you're the landowner, we're going to pay you over time. Instead of paying you right now a lump sum, we're going to give you a tax break to take this over time, and that way the government doesn't have to come up with all the money at once. Instead of borrowing from China, why don't we let somebody that is a citizen of the United States, that's a landowner, a taxpayer, why don't we let them benefit from this road and say, over time, we're going to pay you X amount of dollars, you're not going to take it all in one lump sum, and because of that, we're going to cut you a tax break for giving that land over now and not taking the lump sum. We incentivize them helping us build a road that we can't afford to build a road right now. We get creative, and that's how a business person would think. And there are going to be a lot of different things. But as the congressman, and I'm the only one that brings this background, this is where I get excited. All of us can go to Washington, and probably 80% of us would vote most of the time the same. But here's the real question. Who knows what JOFSA is? Well, JOFSA is the company that bought the property building intermodal port in South Carolina. Who's been over there to talk to them? I have. Who knows about Nanya Plastics? They employ hundreds of people here in this congressional district. None of the other candidates know who that is. Why do I know who they are? Because I've been to Taiwan and met with them. I've been here and met with them at their plant. I fostered those relationships. When the governor couldn't go on economic development trips, I went and paid for it out of my own pocket. And so if the Governor Haley, needs someone to do economic development, you can bet this congressman's going to go and fight for everything I can to tell people why they need to invest in the PD and the Grand Strand. If it's small business, if it's the Department of Commerce, I can do it. I've already done it. And so I don't have to go and try to learn over a couple of years what the congressman needs to do. I've actually appeared before Congress not once, but twice. Once for a company located right here in our 7th Congressional District, Nucor Steel, when they were being flooded with Turkish steel, and it was an unfair trade advantage. And once for the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act, fighting for these very seniors who are watching your show. Nobody has to educate me on so many of their issues. So I think what we bring is vastly different. There are a lot of great folks running for this seat, and a lot of them would be good congressmen. But there's one fella that has a background, not only a business background, but a background in serving in different capacities in which I focused all my time. That part-time job as lieutenant governor, I did it full-time for the pay. For the part-time pay, I did it full-time, and I took every advantage I could to make myself a better elected official. And so I think that's why I'm positioned well now to be the next congressman from this district.
I want to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the broader national issues.
Okay.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Carolina This Week. My guest this week is former Lieutenant Governor, current 7th Congressional District candidate, Andre Bauer. Again, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about some of the bigger national issues. Just about everybody I've interviewed, Democrats included, with the exception of one or two, have said one of the first things I'd do is try to repeal Obamacare. What would you do about health care?
We need to repeal Obamacare, but there's a multitude of things we need to do. First off, ERs are being abused. People that don't pay for them, use them as a primary care physician. We need to direct them to a general practitioner. The cost is 3-4-fold. Tonight, I'm actually going to meet with several CEOs of hospitals to try to get a better understanding of ways we can cut costs. I'm meeting with anybody I can that has more information than I do on solving these problems. But we know we have people that don't pay for these services that take advantage of it, where you and I have a big deductible and we're discouraged from going anytime unless we have to. I don't know about you, but I only buy catastrophic care now in health care insurance because it's so expensive. I mean, my deductibles are extremely high, and I pay a high payment every month. We got to look at some of these things. We need to look at competition. We need to look at Medicare and Medicaid and how we can better it. But when I was Lieutenant Governor, you know what we did? We came up with a system where if somebody had a question about Medicare Part D, they called the office, we walked them through, and they said what their income was, how many drugs they used, and we could tell them what program best suited their needs. Well, that's what we need to do now. We need to find programs that best suit their needs. Sometimes they're getting things that they really don't need a test for. We're wasting money there. We need to find everywhere we can to cut costs. But I tell you what we don't need to do, and that is shortchange doctors. And you are seeing that happen right now, cutting doctors over 25% of their pay. We want good people in the medical profession. And you start taking the pay away from folks that have had to spend an enormous amount of time in school, you're going to discourage good, well-qualified people from being in the medical profession. I don't know about you, but I'm much more concerned about having a highly paid doctor than I am a highly paid athlete. And I think we've got our priorities in the wrong area. We need to make sure that we are still the best healthcare system in the world.
Let's talk about foreign affairs. We see what's happening in Syria right now. A lot of people saying we should do something to intervene in Syria. We see a war in Afghanistan that's winding down, and the war in Iraq is over. What do you think we should be doing as far as foreign policy is concerned right now?
I think we are in too many places. We have spread ourselves extremely thin. We have used folks that thought they were going to be National Guard, just temporarily used. It's full-time, going 2 and 3 times now, away from their families. We have worn these folks out, and we have continued to be the world's peacekeepers. We are in countries all over the world where after the war, World War II, in Germany, how many bases do we have? In Japan, in Italy, and we're doing their policing. I think we need to look really at what the fundamental responsibility is to keep this country strong. Build it up, have the best Army, the best Navy, the best Air Force, and make ourselves extremely strong, and then carefully choose where we have bases strategically around the world. But fighting all these wars, a lot of them by ourselves, we shouldn't even be in the UN, but if we're going to be in the UN, let them help us fight some of these battles. We don't have the funds to fight them anymore. We have worn our force down. I look at where we're building embassies in all these different countries that aren't our friends, and I go, why are we spending billions of dollars when we are selling ourselves to the Chinese? It's disheartening, and it concerns me. It's one of the reasons why I'm going, we need to wake up. It's one of the reasons I chose to get into this fight for running for Congress. Somebody's got to speak up and not always be so politically correct, but say, folks, we can't keep doing what we're doing. We are going down a road that financially we cannot fund anymore.
Final question for you. I ask everybody this.
Okay.
Why should I vote for you?
Well, I think I've given you a good.
You've given me some ammunition, but here's your
you take the candidates, and all of them are going to go up there, and the leadership's going to lean on them. Look, I don't check my brains at the door for the leadership. I don't check my brains at the door for a party. I don't check my brains at the door for one business in this district. I work for the people. I have a clean record that I've never voted for a tax increase. I took a job that was a ceremonial job, and it now runs a $40 million agency. It was temporary when I took over, and they ended up making it permanent, and it was permanent, and it was a huge, huge success, recognized all over the country as one of the best aging systems in America. I've got a track record that shows that I've done it. I've got a good business track record, and more than that, I am the guy that not even holding public office, just helped put over 100 new jobs in Myrtle Beach. I've been doing the job of what a congressman should do without being the congressman. Can you imagine if I actually have a little staff to help me?
I forgot about one other question that I've started asking all the
right.
candidates, and that is about who you're going to vote for president. We
Well, I
saw
already
you. We
voted.
saw you. Well, who you're going to vote? Well, who you're supporting for president. We saw you when Newt Gingrich had his acceptance speech. I saw you standing on the podium there with him.
I endorsed Newt early on. Clearly, the president we got now is not getting the job done, period. And any candidate the Republicans are running, I would vote for over what we have now.
Is there a particular Republican you would like to see on the ticket?
Absolutely. I want to see Newt Gingrich debate Obama and go head-to-head with him on real issues. But again, I'm going to vote for whoever the nominee is. But early on, I supported Gingrich before he ever came to South Carolina and before he was a real contender.
All right. Former Lieutenant Governor and current candidate Andre Bauer, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you for giving me a few minutes this morning.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.